Hello guys, so in today's lesson we want to look at what threats did Elizabeth I face from abroad from that period of 1558 to 1568. And our lesson objectives are to understand why Elizabeth faced opposition from abroad from this time period, but also try and understand and evaluate to work out what actions she took and how successful they were. Was Elizabeth able to deal with the threat in the correct way at this time? Now, a bit different. Normally you'd have a worksheet. It's only a short lesson, so I'm going to say actually, rather than give you some questions, all I want you guys to do is just make notes on this. You don't have to show us the notes. I trust that you're doing it. Now, I said in the previous video that I think the best way of doing this is with flashcards, but that's my personal preference. And I've modelled for you there how I would set the cards up with questions at the front and answers on the back to help with your revision. You can make notes in any way that will help you to understand this course content. Now, if I'm not clear in my explanations, then the revision guide is online on Google Classrooms as well, and pages 10 to 12 will help you with that. Okay, 3 different threats. The first one, quite a short one at this time, although this threat would increase later on, and that's the papacy. And in 1566, the Pope stated that people in England should not go to Elizabeth's Church of England services. And that meant the Catholics in England were now torn, because Elizabeth was saying, no, you must go to my services at least once a week. And the Pope was saying, no, don't go to them at all. This meant the people of England now had to choose between their religious leader's advice, the Pope, or what their monarch was telling them to do, and they were put in an uncomfortable situation. Now, at this point, that's all we've got to say about the Pope, really, but his influence will increase in the next time period we look at later on in the course. So, if you remember, the 2 most powerful countries at this time were France and Spain, and both were Catholic. But in 1562, religious war broke out in Catholic France between the Catholics and the Protestants. There were some Protestants in France, and now they were fighting to take control of the country. Now this worried Elizabeth, because she felt actually that if the people in England saw what was going on, then that might encourage the Catholics. The Catholics might say, look what's going on in France, we should rise as well, we should fight the Protestants. So it'd sort of be a mirror of what was going on in France at the time. Now, what Elizabeth did was she said, I'm going to help the French Protestants. Elizabeth was hoping to actually turn France Protestant, so it would have an ally instead, and helping the French Protestants was a way of doing this. But it wasn't particularly successful, as we'll see. Now, Elizabeth was hoping to get this area on the map here, Calais, this part of France, and it used to be controlled by England, but they'd had to give it up. However, like I said, the Protestants failed. They were not able to overthrow the Catholics in France, and so the Protestants made peace with the French Catholics. And to make matters worse, Elizabeth had to sign the Treaty of Troyes in 1564. And this treaty basically confirms that Calais belonged to France and England had no right to it at all. A much bigger problem was Spain. Now, Spain controlled several countries as a part of their empire. One of those countries they controlled was the Netherlands. You can see it there on the map. And at this point, I'm going to keep coming back to hammer this point home, but can you just see how close the Netherlands actually is to England? Okay, I'm going to come back to that later on. But Spain, although they controlled the Netherlands, for a long time, they had sort of let them govern themselves. They had let them make up their own laws. They had let them come up with rules for the religion and so on. But Philip II of Spain decided he would make some changes to the Dutch government and to the Dutch churches. And these changes he made upset the Netherlands so much that angered both the Catholics and the Protestants, who felt actually Spain had no right to tell them how they should be living their lives. And so the Catholics and the Protestants in the Netherlands united. They said, no, we're not going to listen to Spain. We want Spain gone from our country completely. And in 1566, we saw what's called the Dutch Revolt, where the people of the Netherlands basically rose up and started fighting the Spanish troops that were there. Now, as you can imagine, King Philip II of Spain wasn't going to just accept that. So he sent the Duke of Alba, pictured here with his big old wooden stick, with an army of 10,000 men to crush this Dutch revolt. Now, by 1568, he had been successful. The revolt was over. The Netherlands was back under Spanish control again. The issue was dealt with. But Alba was a Catholic, and so he persecuted thousands of Protestants who he blamed for the uprising. And so if you were a Protestant in the Netherlands, you weren't going to stay there. And so these Protestants fled the country. Lots of them came to England, of course, where there was a Protestant monarch on the throne. And we've seen that distance before on the map. It made sense for them to go there. But all of this happening in the Netherlands directly impacted England, and for two reasons, and this caused Elizabeth some worry. First of all, Alba now had a large anti-Protestant army in the Netherlands, and that was very close to England, as you can see here on the map. And if he takes complete control of the Netherlands, then actually what's to stop him from, once he's done there, taking that army, sailing across and starting to fight the English? And also, Elizabeth didn't want to be seen as Europe's leading Protestant monarch, a troublemaker, the main person to get rid of. It would paint a huge target on her from Catholic leaders such as Philip II of Spain. So to try to remove this pressure on her, in public she said these Protestant rebels in the Netherlands are wrong. They shouldn't be fighting Spain like this. But Elizabeth had to be careful. Many people believe that Spain wanted to destroy Protestantism everywhere in Europe, that the Catholic countries saw the Protestant religion as almost like a plague that needed to be wiped out, needed to be removed, that they were doing God's work. And so Elizabeth had to be really careful that Spain or France, or worse still, Spain and France combined, didn't start to invade England. England was still really quite a poor country at this time. They couldn't match up to those two powerhouses in Europe. She has to avoid a war. But Elizabeth wanted to help the Dutch rebels indirectly. She did want to give the Protestants some support. She didn't want Spain just to be able to take over the Netherlands straight away. Now, there were some Dutch rebels who acted like pirates. And what they would do is they would stay in boats in the English Channel, and when they saw Spanish ships approaching with troops or with resources for the Spanish army in the Netherlands, they would target that boat. They would try to make sure that a boat didn't reach the Netherlands. They would attack them. And these people were called sea beggars. Now, obviously, if you're in a boat, at some point you're going to run out of things like ammunition, you're going to run out of food, you're going to need to dock your boat to restock. But if the sea beggars were to reload their boat in the Netherlands, where they were from, the chances are their boat would be captured and they would be killed straight away. So Elizabeth said to the sea beggars, you can shelter in English harbours. You can attack the Spanish ships, and you can come across the English Channel, you can stay in our harbours, you can restock, you can have safety here, and then go back out there again. So she's indirectly getting involved. She is supporting the opposition to the Spanish controlling the Netherlands, but she's doing it in a very sneaky way. Now, a bit more of an obvious way of her doing this was in 1568. There were ships carrying gold, roughly about £85,000 in today's money, to pay the Spanish troops in the Netherlands. So this boat had come all the way from Spain and it was heading towards the Netherlands when it ran into the sea beggars. And so they didn't want to risk being attacked, and so they had to turn, and as quick as they could, they had to find shelter. And of course, the closest country was England. And so they docked their ships in Southampton and Plymouth. And the English inspected these ships to find out what was going on. There was a check and they found the gold. And they asked the Spanish, look, where is this gold going? And they said, it's to pay the Spanish army in the Netherlands. So they keep fighting, so they keep the peace, they keep the control of the Netherlands. And Elizabeth said, well, where's this money come from? And this money had come from a loan from Italian bankers in Genoa. Again, if we remember, Italy, the Pope, and Vatican City, Catholicism. So Italy was paying to try to keep Europe Catholic. And Elizabeth said, okay, this is a loan from someone else. This means that it doesn't belong to you, does it, this money? This money doesn't belong to Spain. This money belongs to the Italian bankers. And we're like, well, yes, sort of, but... And Elizabeth just went, well, I'll take it then. It's not yours. Genius. She just took all of the money off the boats and sent the Spanish back on their way back to Spain with these empty boats. As you can imagine, that greatly angered Spain. Elizabeth has just stolen £85,000 from them. And they need to pay their troops in the Netherlands. The troops in the Netherlands will not be happy if they're not being paid. Now, it is a clever move, but it's dodgy at the same time. Let's recap why she did this. She was trying to make Spain's task in the Netherlands as difficult as possible without directly going to war with them. Okay? She couldn't take on Spain directly. But what she could do was make this conflict that Spain were fighting in just a little bit more difficult for them, helping their enemy out, supporting them. And also, let's recap here. Again, I'm going to make this point. Look at the map. Elizabeth did not want a Spanish army in the Netherlands. It was too close to England. And if she can cause a bit of disruption to that army, meaning it takes them longer to control the Netherlands, if the Spanish troops aren't being paid, that might cause some conflict there. They might not want to fight anymore. It's just little actions like that that started to anger Spain as a result. Okay, and that's that for that section. So just a reminder, flashcards like that would work really well for you guys. Bullet pointing notes down as well. Whatever works. Please do not just make notes for the sake of making notes. Make sure you understand them fully. Okay, make sure you know what you're writing about there. And again, the revision guide, pages 10 to 12, will help you as well in Google Classrooms. And that's it for this week. You've got your 2 lessons there. So I'm hoping that you have completed your other lesson as well that we put online a bit earlier. Thank you very much for your hard work as always. And I will see you next week. Thank you very much. Take care. Bye-bye.